Hello and welcome back to Normal Island Live. My name is Lewis Aaron, and I am joined today by the wonderful Ayden, aka Goatmeall, or the guy who tends to go viral at least once a month for his very famous clip. If you do recognize him, how's it going, Ayden?
It's very well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for that. It
Oh,
does keep.
is it just me, or I can't hear Ayden on the audio? It
Oh,
was
I'm
working
here.
literally 10 seconds ago. I can't hear Ayden. Apparently, it's not happening on the producer's side.
I don't know if the
What?
audience can
This
hear me.
was literally working 2 seconds ago, guys. I
The audience
promise.
is saying we're both here. We just can't hear each other. I can hear him.
Do-do-do-do.
Hmm. Hello.
I still can't. This literally worked 5 seconds ago and hasn't been a problem for the last 20 minutes. I'm going to leave and come straight back. Sorry, guys. Lefty
Oh,
Media.
I'm right here. Welcome to the show, everyone. It's me, alone. I'm in charge now. I'm taking over. The revolution begins tonight. We ride. Oh, he's back.
Ah, I can hear him now.
You can hear me
Why,
now.
why do we pay money for software that doesn't work? Hello and welcome back to Normal Island Live. Sorry, Ayden. How's it going?
Going well, thank you. Yeah, I just had some weird technical issue. No, it's going well. I thank you for the intro. That video does keep going around. I still get a million notifications from it that I've had to turn off notifications. It's very fun.
Are you wearing the same hat from the video?
No, I'm not. Different hat.
But yeah, no, thank you so much for having on the show. When was the last time you were on? It's been a while, I think.
Oh, it has been a while. I think it would have been actually end of last year. I was last on. I think, if I remember rightly.
Right, we're not actually going to talk about this today, though. We tried squeezing it in, but we've got too many stories, and we're going to talk about it later in the week. But what are your thoughts on today's little social media announcement from the government?
It's just, I mean, the problem is it's treating the problem and not the well, no, treating the outcome and not the cause, isn't it? It's really just I don't know. I've got so many thoughts on this, is why I get stumbling on it. It's just I think it's a good thing to be doing. Obviously, we need to be discussing how young people use the internet, but ultimately, it's kind of pushing kids out of having anything to do. So, like, if they don't want them on their phones, what do they want them doing? There's no youth clubs. There's no leisure centers. It's too expensive to do anything. Their parents have no money. What do we want teenagers to be doing? Just kind of sitting, waiting to start working? I don't know. It just feels very unthought through. What do you think?
Obviously, I've only spoken to pretty much people kind of like my age and within my kind of like circle of politics.
Mm,
I think so far, from what I've seen, is that like most people are kind of pushing back on it, not because of the
yeah,
sentiment, but more because of like the implementation. And
that's
then
it.
there's like the mix between like the whole like scrolling at certain times for certain ages, but they can still legally have sex and they can still
I
potentially
know.
legally vote, even though that legislation hasn't gone through yet. It
I
just
know.
seems like a really weird mixed bag that just doesn't seem to make sense. But the reason I wanted to bring it up is because even though we're not covering the story today, I really want to know what people think who are watching, because we do actually have like a massive age range of people who watch. So, and we have people from different countries who watch too. So, if anybody hasn't seen, they're basically restricting social media to under 16s and then trying to stop the time that people can scroll social media up to the age of like 16, 17. So, I just want to know what people actually think so we can kind of use it as like to inform us for when we actually do cover this later in the week. But we will move on to today's show. So we'll bring back Ayden shortly. Coming up on tonight's show, we're talking about Trump going absolutely crazy at Netanyahu. We're going to be talking about the Iran deal. We're going to be talking about what's been happening related to Palestine action and also the Palestinian action activists from last week, which we didn't get a chance to cover, but we're doing the story all in one after the ruling that came today. And then we will be talking about Tommy Robinson, Russia, and a neo Nazi group that he was promoting on social media while he was in Russia. Just remember that you can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work, or by becoming a YouTube member. I, I am having a Another tech issue. My screen has just completely gone off. It is not working today, guys. Uh, Producer, can you just put us to a quick screen for a second? I do apologize, guys, but my screen has just gone blank. I do apologize for that. I pressed some sort of wrong button on the script and it switched to a script that I did a month ago, which wouldn't have been very informative to the audience. I do apologize. But let's just get on with the first story because now I've wasted 2 minutes of everybody's time. But Donald Trump yesterday raged at Netanyahu publicly for trying to compromise the Iran deal, which could potentially see an end to the war, saying he has no fucking judgment. But let's just quickly do some backstory. You guys know I like to kind of like go back and go deep. Over the last few days, Israel, and especially Netanyahu, have been frustrated about Donald Trump's deal with Iran, which has not involved Israel in any part of the process. It has been widely reported on now for years, both from within Israel and other media outlets internationally, that Netanyahu has been maintaining a constant state of war to stay in power, to delay his corruption trial, which started now over 6 years ago, and also to use his position to avoid further proceedings against him and his team, many of whom have already been indicted for crimes relating to further corruption. And even more recently, 3 days ago, another Netanyahu aide, Jonathan Urich, has been indicted for leaking a classified intelligence file to the German newspaper Bild. Now, this was part of a disinformation campaign to influence the public's perception on the war to ensure that it continued, which coincidentally, the Jewish Chronicle also published this in the UK at the same time. It's owned by Robbie Gibb, who is on the board of the BBC, who's been accused of multiple interventions of the news coverage at the BBC. His media outlet also published this leaked intelligence at the same time, but they could not prove that Netanyahu's aide, Jonathan Urich, also leaked it to that outlet, so he is only being charged for the Bild leak. Now Urich, who was also previously indicted for intimidating witnesses in Netanyahu's ongoing current corruption trial, he's also under investigation for Qatargate, which I would recommend that people look up and look into, but it's an ongoing scandal related to the Qatari FIFA World Cup, so it's very topical right now, where Netanyahu and his team have been investigated for taking money off Qatari agents to bribe journalists and other officials to promote Qatar's image ahead of the World Cup. Now, Netanyahu and his inner circle have currently been served multiple indictments spreading across 9 different people, and it's about to be 10, apparently. So his former chief of staff is reportedly about to be indicted. His name is Tachi Braverman, for attempting to stop the investigation about the leaked media intelligence. Now, in recent days, it's been reported that Netanyahu's request for a pardon from the president of Israel is set to be denied, as the legal president basically says that you either have to be found guilty or admit to the crime first before being pardoned. Now, essentially, Netanyahu is desperate, and even the Pentagon had to take recent steps and extra precautions recently due to the concerns that Israel was even spying on US officials over the deal as they were excluded from it. And with an election looming over Israel in a few months' time, Netanyahu is running out of options. Now, over the last 48 hours, it seemed highly likely that the US were about to sign some sort of deal with Iran, which would put a stop to the war with Iran, potentially the invasion of Lebanon, and even the withdrawal of the IDF from southern Lebanon, which Netanyahu openly told reporters over the last few days that that's just going to continue. Now, if we all remember, on the 7th of June, just a week or so ago, Iran fired multiple attacks on Israel due to their heavy bombardment on Beirut. And the sheer intensity of it grabbed the global headlines, and in response, Iran attacked Israel. Now, news was spreading globally yesterday, and right from the horse's mouth, Trump himself saying that the deal being signed was imminent. Israel decided at this moment to replicate the intensity of the bombing on Beirut to obviously trigger the same response they got from Iran only days previously. Iran very quickly promised a response, which I'm sure Netanyahu was pleased. He was pleased with his work. Now, one man was obviously not happy with this. In a phone call to Axios, Trump said to a reporter, it shook it up. It delayed the signing by a few hours. It was supposed to be now. Now it's scheduled for a few hours from now. I was tempted to almost do Trump's voice then, but I'm just not even going to attempt it. It's so bad. I couldn't believe it. An hour before we are supposed to sign the deal, why did Bibi have to do a fucking attack? I was so pissed off, I let him know. He has no fucking judgment. I let him know that. Now, Netanyahu's plans have so far obviously failed for now, and an immediate ceasefire is currently in place. It seems to be somewhat kind of holding. There are disputes around what's actually been agreed. And, you know, Netanyahu has been around for long. He is undeniably a brilliant schemer and tactician. You have to say that, regardless of your feelings for him. Now, the full details of the deal have not been disclosed yet, so we will likely cover them once they are properly released. But again, people are arguing consistently over social media, which again reminds the weirdness of this age, about what has actually been agreed. But I am less worried about what has actually been agreed to, and more worried about what Netanyahu will do next. Ayden, how are you
Hello.
feeling
How are you feeling
about all of
about
this?
all of this? What?
Oh, have you got an echo?
Oh,
on
have you
your
got an
side?
echo on your side?
Oh no, I don't.
We seem to be having
We
some.
seem to be having some.
What is going on today,
What is
guys?
going on today, guys?
Am I all good?
It's okay. I'll mute.
It's
and I'm
okay.
just
I'll
going
mute, and I'm
to,
just going
mute while you're
to
chatting.
mute while you're chatting.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, I think on this, it's interesting because Trump. I think the whole thing with Trump is that he was trying to make sure that everything was aligned perfectly, so his birthday celebration could be this big event. And so I don't know if he's upset that Bibi, as he so lovingly calls him, has caused a rift even further into this problem, or if he's more upset that he's just made his birthday party not exactly what he wanted it to be. I think it's far more likely that it's that, which is an indictment on the entire American system. But generally speaking, I do think that America might be at its wits' end with Netanyahu and with Is Not Real because they simply can't economically put up with it for much longer. And Netanyahu doesn't care about that. He only cares about expanding the land they own. And they're essentially fucked, I would say.
Yeah, I didn't
the proper question.
the proper question because
Apparent ongoing
apparent
audio.
ongoing audio.
What I'm kind of just most scared of is Netanyahu has constantly just done everything that he can to essentially stay in power and try and avoid any scrutiny against him. It's not even been widely reported on about all the people who are indicted around him, the fact that he's tried to secure this pardon. We also had, and again, not really reported on, Trump over the last few months literally ringing up random Israeli media channels and like just shouting at the president through the media to pardon him. You know, he's continued to expand territory into Syria. He's doing what he's doing right now to Lebanon, obviously Gaza. I'm somewhat terrified about what could happen next because you've got the election looming in a few months. And I'm just curious on what do you think will happen if Netanyahu escalates with kind of like the mood of Trump right now. Because I'm also scared that Trump's got his own plans with places like Cuba. Because we recently got the news of I don't know if you saw this, that they're redeploying lots of NATO assets from the US, from Europe, including lots of ships. And we've now obviously got the still instability of Iran, Hormuz. And then next you've got coming up with potentially Cuba. So from what you've seen, we're going to get any stability on Iran, looking at what we can see so far with Netanyahu's intentions. And then you also have to consider what could potentially be happening with America's ulterior motive of like kind of the rushness to get this done.
I would say I don't think we got stability on the horizon, but I do think we have basically like an agreed amount of chaos that's allowed. So I don't think we're going to be looking at like peace talk. We're going to be stopping any attacks, and I do think Trump is going to use playbooks that have been done before to expand his reach and try and grab power and try and grab land. But I don't know if his plans and Netanyahu's plans are going to be that well aligned to allow them to do that together. I feel like Netanyahu has got his own thing and Trump's got his own thing, and they really are only working together because they're helping each other. As soon as Netanyahu starts fucking up Trump's ability to do what he wants, Trump, I think, will cut things loose because this isn't America that's operating, it's Trump. And the history of America supporting Israel disappears when it comes to how it affects Trump personally. So I would say that overall, it's looking more and more like we're not going to get anything settled because these two guys who are friendly right now will turn on each other inevitably because that's what these people do when things don't go their way. And all of the power will essentially be in Iran's hands because they can just close the Strait of Hormuz like that if Israel does not behave the way they want them to. And that will then have a knock-on effect on America. And then America will be able to do what they want by invading other countries. And so we kind of have this agreed upon level of chaos that will be fine as long as nobody fucks. It's basically everyone, we're in a standoff and everyone's standing around looking at each other saying, if you fuck me off, I'm going to fuck that guy off. And it kind of just goes around like that. So if that's peace, then you could call it peace, I would say. I don't know if you agree with that. Well,
Incredible.
this has gone well so far. But, in other news, I don't know who to bounce off of now. What about you? Let's just throw it to the room. I'll just keep spieling. I do think, though, it's interesting that the world in general kind of is trying to continue without Netanyahu and Trump. Like, I feel like a lot of the world is kind of watching them go back and forth and isn't really knowing what to do about it. So they're kind of trying to do their own thing. Like, I've not been checking up on China recently, but they're just kind of, the do nothing win meme becomes more and more true as time goes on. And Europe is kind of coalescing more. So that's interesting. I'm going off the dome here. Lewis, are you back?
Let me back.
I have literally no idea what is going on.
It's on stage. Oh, we're both here now.
Hang on, I've put us in the comments section. Just for a minute.
I don't have any on me.
Terribly sorry about this, guys. Sorry. Everything was working literally right before the show and for 2 hours before, and everything just keeps going like this. Not sure exactly what the issue is, but Lefty Media, how much can we use that excuse for? What what I'm going to quickly do is that we do actually have a 13-minute video coming up for story 2. So what I'm going to propose that we do is we'll go to the video. We interviewed Huda, who is the co-founder, Huda Amori from the co-founder of Palestine Action. We will jump to story 2 and we will play the 13-minute interview that Curtis did today with her while I just sort out these tech issues. I do apologize, Ayden. And we'll see you all back here in 13 minutes after the interview with Huda Amori. That's fine. Producer's just saying something in my ear. Let's still, yeah, let's still go to a 13-minute video, and we will hopefully get everything fixed by the time it's back.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on Turn Left.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What's your reaction to the Filton 4 being sentenced to a total of 26 years, with it being ruled as acts of terrorism?
It's just completely unjust. It's morally wrong. It's legally wrong. And of course, the key thing is that they were never able to defend themselves against the real accusation against them, which was terrorism. They were not even allowed to defend themselves against the criminal damage charge, which led to the terrorism sentencing, because they were gagged. They weren't allowed to talk about their motivations. They weren't allowed to talk about Albert's crimes. They weren't allowed to rely on defences enshrined in British law, such as acting to save lives in Gaza. They were completely gagged, but at the same time, the judge used their motivations, which they weren't even allowed to talk about in trial, as a reason to sentence them as terrorists. I think it's important to understand as well that before the Filton action happened, and we know this because of the prescription case, 2 months before, there was a meeting which followed lots of meetings between Israeli government ministers, British ministers, police, CPS, etc. And in this meeting, they discussed prescribing Palestine action. Police and prosecutors discussed prescribing Palestine action before anyone had ever been arrested for under the Terrorism Act for taking direct action. And so in order to prescribe us, they had to say we were concerned with terrorism. And in order to do that, they had to start accusing people of terrorism offences for taking direct action. But then in order to get it over the line, they had to completely stitch up the trial where you were not able to defend yourself against the terrorism accusation against you. And you're completely gagged at trial and then sentenced as a terrorist at the end.
So we've had that, and now we've had recent news of the courts backing the government with their prescription of Palestine Action as a terrorist group. So I would like to get your response to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly disappointing, and it's a dark day in terms of our rights in Britain, in terms of our civil liberties. But at the same time, no struggle is simple. The state have literally thrown everything at Palestine Action in order to protect the Israeli weapons industry, in order to protect the Zionist regime. And I think this whole process has just exposed how far they're willing to go in order to protect the Israeli weapons industry. And that is only leading to more and more people from the public being outraged at how they're prioritizing Albert systems over the rights and freedoms of its own citizens. So I believe that the resistance against this is only going to grow on the back of it. And once again, just like the prescription in the first place massively backfires on the government, this decision will also backfire. And we're going to fight this the whole way, to the Supreme Court, and we're willing to take it to the European Court of Human Rights if needs be.
As an interesting stat I read, so the average terror suspect. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on to.
They've, the word terrorist has completely lost its meaning. And we know it's been used against oppressed groups and Palestinians for decades, but they've taken it so far to the point where now being a terrorist, the label terrorist, means basically nothing in the eyes of the general public. They've undermined the counterterrorism regime completely. And that's a very dangerous thing for them to do. And also the amount of resources that are being used in order to arrest people for holding signs, in order to, we've had several people now detained at the airport under Schedule 7 powers. We've had counterterrorism police try and make a local cafe owner in Manchester an informer into Palestine Action. They are pulling everything into this, into what? Into trying to target people who are effectively opposing a genocide, who are effectively destroying Israeli drones and disrupting the likes of Albert systems, which make weapons to massacre people in Palestine, to commit genocide, while simultaneously people who go from Britain to serve in the Israeli military and literally commit war crimes in Gaza, they're not even investigating them. So the hypocrisy has become extremely clear for everyone to see. And I believe that Britain relied on appearing to be fair, appearing to respect human rights. They've thrown that out of the window at this point. And I believe once you get to that point, when you've gone that far for the Israeli weapons industry, you are really at a point of desperation, and it's close to breaking that relationship.
So is going to the European courts, is that the last thing you can do to try and take this further, or is there other things you can do to fight back against this ruling?
What I'd say is the legal way is one way. The political route is really how we're going to win this, because this is a completely politicized case. So just in terms of the legal route, just to be clear, the next step is to go to the Supreme Court. So we'll put in an appeal immediately and we're on an expedited process, which means it's quicker in legal terms, which is not very quick to the normal people. But hopefully in the next few months we'll be in the Supreme Court. And if that doesn't work, or if that doesn't work, then we would appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. I do believe we have a solid case. So it's my opinion, and it's the opinion of my lawyers and several legal experts, that in the European Court of Human Rights, it's extremely, extremely likely that we would win. We are just right on the law. This is just disproportionate to human rights and free speech. The issue we're up against is the politicized nature of this whole thing from the very beginning. And to be clear, it's targeting solidarity with Palestine. And it's the Palestine exception. This hasn't happened before to direct action groups, but it just highlights how closely allied Britain is, and also the judiciary is, with the Zionist regime, and also with Elbit systems. But the ruling today, the judgment, it was like a press release written by the Home Secretary. It reminded me of the statement she made when they first tried to prescribe Palestine action. It was completely politicized. It was designed to try and smear us as much as possible in the public. And at the same time, what's crazy about this as well, I mean, there's a lot of crazy things about this. The second trial of the Filton 25 is starting today at the Old Bailey. And they put out the most prejudicial stuff on Palestine action right at the same time. And they timed this judgment to happen on the same day as the second trial of the Filton 25 case, and 3 days after they sentenced people as terrorists. This whole thing has been orchestrated. So the real way we're going to win this is politically, is by growing the resistance against the ban. And it's by everyone standing up against this. That's how we can defeat it.
Are you surprised that this has happened? Because, of course, initially the court rules that the prescription was unlawful, but in a strange, well, it's not strange, but what subsequently happened was the Met Police wasn't going to enforce or reverse the enforcement. So when people were still being arrested, even though the court ruled, oh, maybe it was unlawful to ban the group, Met Police continue to basically say, we're going to continue what we're doing, and we're going to wait for the appeal. And of course, the appeal's happened, and now they've backed the government. Are you surprised that's happened?
I'm surprised at today's ruling, if I'm completely honest, mainly because when we were in the High Court, from the very beginning, I felt like we were going to win. We had a very solid case. However, just a week before our High Court judicial review, they changed the judges. And these were extremely pro-government judges, extremely biased. And so at that point, I felt like we'd lost, and it was a stitch-up. And then we won. And so I think that sense gave us the sense that if we can win in front of those judges, we're going to win in front of the Court of Appeal. However, politically and realistically, that hasn't happened. And, it does follow logic in the sense that of what they did in the Filton case, of how it's been set up and stitched up from the very beginning. And that, in any struggle, it's never simple. It's never easy. You're going to go through ups and downs. But the key thing is that whenever there's repression, is that there's more resistance to it. And I believe that's what this moment is going to do, and that we are on the way to winning and defeating this ban. We just have to keep fighting and not let what they're doing, the use of terror legislation, to deter us in fighting against this ban, in acting in solidarity with the Palestinian people, and in acting in solidarity with the prisoners, with the Filton prisoners and others who are potentially maybe facing, a similar as the use of terror legislation against them in these prosecutions that are coming up.
Do you think this now sets a precedent for government to be able to prescribe any organisation in the UK who carry out any criminal damage?
So we were the first group to be banned on the basis, an undersold basis. I know the Court of Appeal judges tried to make it seem like it was about something else. The only basis that the government had was about serious damage to property, and there's a serious damage to property clause under the Terrorism Act. Just for a bit of context to that clause, that came mostly because of the Irish Republican Army bombing of an Arndale centre in Manchester some years before, where it cost hundreds of millions of pounds worth of damage, but no one was killed because they called in, evacuated the building beforehand. That's what their historical understanding and context is, the serious property damage clause. They're now trying to reinterpret that to mean serious property damage to mean over £1 million, basically. They haven't said that clearly, but it's quite clear from the Filton case that they've made this arbitrary decision that we're now going to say if you cause over £1 million worth of damage, it's potentially terrorism. So that's what they've been using to justify this prescription. The thing is, though, is that had never happened before, and it suddenly becomes, well, it's when you destroy, because in the Filton case, they destroyed over 40 weapons in that factory, including drones. Basically, the message is if you damage too many Israeli weapons, if you're too effective in disrupting the Israeli weapons industry, we'll call you a terrorist, and effectively use that to ban the idea of direct action under Palestine action altogether. So quite rapidly becoming that the threshold for what is terrorism is drastically potentially reducing. And, it's not even just direct action, which is being considered terrorism. It's speech that's being considered terrorism. It's the signs being considered terrorism. Even before that, people being rounded up and raided because they put something out about the resistance in Gaza. The terrorism legislation is being heavily weaponized and used against people showing solidarity with Palestine. And I believe that's just going to set the groundwork for it to be used even further.
Hello, everyone. We do apologize for the tech issues. We have figured out it is the software, and Curtis is putting in a very angry complaint. They can't hear me? Do you hear me now? Nope, everyone else can hear me. It's just you. So I do apologize, guys. We're having problems with the software. Curtis is currently putting in a very angry email because it does seem that every time we're switching scenes and using the software that we pay money for, that it seems to be kicking me out of my camera and my microphone every single time and defaulting me back to my standard audio on my laptop. So I do apologize. So I'm going to, the interview is supposed to be the end of the story. So I'm going to do the story from the top just so we've got all the information. And hopefully we won't have any more tech issues, but we will see. And hopefully we won't. So I do apologize to our lovely, amazing guest, Ayden, because he's had to put up with a lot today so far. And so have our viewers. So just from the top with our second story. The prison sentence is handed down to 4 Palestine action activists should worry anyone who cares about civil liberties. Even those who have no sympathy for the tactics used, we should all be caring about this because it's not just about Palestine Action, it's about the powers that the government is using, the judiciary is using. So Charlotte Head, Samuel Corner, Leona Camillo, and Fatima Rajwana were not convicted of terrorism offences. They were convicted after a raid on Elbit Systems, a UK site that's near Bristol, where equipment was damaged, and in Corner's case, a police officer was injured. Now, that injury was serious and cannot be brushed aside. Criminal damage and violence can be prosecuted by the state in its normal way, which it always has done. But that is precisely the point. The ordinary criminal law was already available. The state did not need to stretch the language of terrorism to punish what happened. Now, the real controversy is not whether the activists broke the law. It is that after the jury had convicted them of ordinary offences, the judge treated the case as having a terrorist connection for sentencing. That distinction matters because a terrorism label is not a neutral sentencing footnote. It changes release conditions, brings notification requirements, and brands defendants in a way that ordinary criminal convictions do not. Even more troubling is the role of the jury. The jury was not asked to decide whether these were terrorists. The terrorism issue was kept out of the trial and, for a period, out of public reporting. The defendants were convicted by jurors who were considering criminal damage, not terrorism. Then, at the sentencing stage, the same conduct was reframed through counter-terrorism law. So how does all of this make sense? It simply doesn't. Now, this is why the case has provoked such sharp criticism from lawyers and academics. Michael Mansfield, KC, told LBC that the fact that these activists who were convicted of criminal damage could now be sentenced as terrorists would be a miscarriage of justice. If a court is going to sentence somebody for something which has a terrorist connection, they have to have been charged with it. Now, he's among a dozen lawyers or so who have so far come out and co-signed a letter which states sentencing the Filton Four as terrorists would violate basic legal principles. Other legal professionals warn that sentencing people as terrorists after ordinary convictions risks a serious constitutional abuse. Jonathan Hall, KC, the independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, has also raised the broader concern that where criminal damage is charged as non-terrorism offence, the question of terrorism connection may be too important just to be left to a judge alone. Now, that criticism is hard to dismiss. If the Crown believes someone has committed terrorism, it should charge terrorism and prove it openly. The jury should hear the case, the defense should be able to answer it, and the public should be able to scrutinize it. What should not happen is a two-stage process in which a person is tried as a criminal defendant but sentenced as something close to a terrorist. Now, this is not an argument for impunity. It is an argument for legal honesty. Destroying property at a weapons factory is criminal damage. Injuring a police officer is a serious offence. But calling political criminal damage terrorism expands the state's most exceptional powers into the territory of protest and direct action. Once that line is crossed, it will not stay confined to Palestine Action. Now, that is the wider significance of today's decision on the prescription of Palestine Action. The Court of Appeal has upheld the government's ban, overturning the earlier High Court ruling that found prescription unlawful and disproportionate. The result is that Palestine Action remains prescribed as an organisation under the Terrorism Act of 2000. Membership, inviting support or displaying support can now carry severe criminal consequences. This is historic. Palestine Action is widely understood to be the first direct action protest group to be banned under terrorism legislation, and Liberty, the organization, has argued it is the first group prescribed on the basis of property damage. That matters because it creates a precedent far beyond this one organization. The government now has judicial approval for using counterterrorism powers against domestic direct action networks whose central conduct, however unlawful, has been framed around sabotage and criminal damage. Now, does this mean that now an animal rights group breaking into an animal testing facility can now be classed as terrorists and terrorism, or perhaps Just Stop Oil throwing paint on a building? It's criminal damage, so are they now terrorists? I'm terrified about how, not just how the current government is applying this, how the judiciary is holding it up, but how future governments, perhaps a Farage government or even something worse, could abuse these powers now that they've been so opened up by the judiciary and abused by the government. Now, the Court of Appeal accepted that the ban interferes with free speech and assembly and even recognized a chilling effect, but it ultimately deferred to the Home Secretary's assessment of risk and national security. That deference is the problem. Counterterrorism law already gives ministers enormous power. If courts are too willing to accept broad executive claims of risk, the legal boundary between terrorism and disruptive protest becomes dangerously thin. The earlier High Court ruling had taken a more rights-conscious approach, finding that the ban breached government's own policy and unjustifiably interfered with the expression and assembly that people have the right to in this country. Public law scholars have said that the Terrorism Act's definition is now wide enough to capture serious property damage done for political causes. That means that the safeguard is no longer the statute itself, but the discretion of ministers, prosecutors, and judges. And it's just not good enough. Liberty has described the UK definition of terrorism as intentionally overbroad. It includes serious damage to property, meaning the direct action can now fall within terrorism laws, even where normally it would be dealt just with criminal damage laws and procedures, and that's how it would always be processed through the judiciary. Now, once that framework is accepted, future governments will be tempted to apply it to, as I mentioned before, climate activists and animal rights groups, even anti-war campaigners, or any movement that uses sabotage as a political tactic. Now, the state already has massive powers around this. They can prosecute conspiracy, criminal damage, burglary, violent disorder, assault, and sabotage. It does not need to call activists terrorists to secure punishment. And the danger is, again, the way it can be used by other people in the future and bad actors, or even in the near future. Now that they've used this and got away, maybe they're just going to use it again. The government will say this is about public safety, but public safety is not protected by hollowing out the legal categories until every serious act of protest-related damage can be treated as terrorism. That does not strengthen the rule of law, it only weakens it. Now, the Palestine action cases show a state of increasing willingness to treat political defiance as national security threats. Criminal damage should be punished as criminal damage. Violence should be punished as violence. Terrorism laws should be reserved for actual terrorists and actual terrorist organizations. Anything else is government overreach dressed up as public protection. Now, Ayden, at this point, we were going to play the lovely interview that we had with Huda Murray, who was so willing to have a nice chat with us earlier today. But we had to rearrange things due to the tech issues we were having earlier. I'm just curious, almost like combining these two things together. Obviously, one's gone through the judiciary. One is basically come from the government that has then gone through the judiciary too. What are your just general thoughts and feelings just on the whole situation related to both cases?
It's one of disgust. Really, is the overwhelming feeling, because I like you said, I really enjoyed the point you made of not only is this a great overreach on the government's powers, it's opening up the door to future abuses that are untold, because it seems that Labour don't know how to do anything, but they are especially open to creating a world in which Reform can win an election and use these powers against anybody that they deem it reasonable. It's a little bit like how the key of enabling the death penalty is in every prime minister's hand, and it's up to them if they want to turn it, but they should never turn it, because they might not use it for anything negative, but people down the line can. And once you go beyond that threshold, it's impossible to get it back. And I think overwhelmingly, this is despicable and disgusting, and a real another example of the Keir Starmer's Labour Party wanting to overstep what is deemed reasonable reach from the government, and infuriating.
I'm going to drag Shamima Begum into this, and the reason I'm doing it is because it comes under the broad powers of the Home Secretary. I think those powers come from the 1970s originally. It's the conducive to the public good clause, right? Shamima Begum's court cases have never been about whether she's guilty or not. It's always been about whether just the Home Secretary has the power to do what he did at the time. It's Sajid Javid, I believe. And for me, it is terrifying. And even again, I've invoked this multiple times. People like Jacob Rees-Mogg agree with this concept that you can't have, and this is the correct use of it, a two-tier justice system where somebody can be treated a certain way because of special government powers and other groups might not be, or where the grey areas lie, that there should be on some of these checks, some of these powers checks, at least through some sort of independent process. So right now, technically Tommy Robinson is a dual citizen, right? believe he has Irish citizenship, maybe a Russian passport, who knows? And they could destate him if they wanted to under the same process. They don't have to take him to court. They don't have to present the evidence. I would be against that because I would want him to have at least some sort of independent review from a maybe judge or a panel of judges or just some other process where it's not politically motivated. Because there's actually a really famous case, but when I looked up the Shamima stuff quite a few years ago, there was like 500 cases of the government removing people's citizenship, and I looked at some of these cases, and there was one guy, can't remember his name. He went to Bangladesh. The government they said they had evidence against him that he was associated with terrorist organizations. They took his citizenship off of him, and he actually got it back. And when he came back to the country, the government didn't even arrest him, which shows that the evidence that they have against him colluding with a terrorist organization is not even enough for an arrest, but they can destate somebody.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody should have that power. It needs to have, in these forms, some sort of independent review, because today's ruling isn't about whether they're a terrorist organization or not. It's just whether the Home Secretary, again, has the power. So we now have Home Secretary powers that can destate people without question, that can prescribe terrorist organizations, essentially, seemingly, without as much evidence that was previously used to prescribe previous actual terrorist organizations. And it's terrifying. I'll give you one word response. Will Reform abuse this if they come into power?
Yes. Obviously.
Now you can elaborate, but yeah, like, can we imagine what they would do with this? What was it that Suella Braverman did a few years ago? The tofu eating Wokarati ran. If I remember correctly, she referred to I don't think it was just Stop Oil then. Was it Extinction Rebellion? She was calling them eco-terrorists, and she wanted to try and like prescribe them, but she never actually went all the way.
Yes.
Do we want to live in that world where just everyone's a terrorist?
This is it, and it's funny because it's always the woke left that want to cancel people. It's always the woke left that want to silence anyone that disagrees with them. But the second they think they can get away with this kind of power grab, they want to do it. And it used to be like a conservative position to think that everyone deserves a fair trial, it's checks and balances, do things properly. And the Overton window has shifted so far that even our so supposedly centre left Labour Party are putting forward these ideas. It's disgusting because the world, the doors that this opens, and the insanity that can come forward from this of just calling anybody you don't like a terrorist is, I mean, it's already happening. I mean, there's so many videos of right wingers going to events, going to public places, and antagonizing people. And then the second that somebody hits them or shouts at them, I'm the victim. Oh, this person's a terrorist. Oh, the leftist, the evil leftist. It's back to the old adage, it's Nazi shit. It's fucking Nazi shit. And we're back to it.
And obviously we've been how many months now? I'm just literally looking. We're in June, so it's like 16, 17 months into having Trump now in the US. He did the whole, I'm gonna use my powers to prescribe the Trente Drag. I can't remember what they're called. People know who I'm talking about. The like Venezuelan group, because they tried to use that as a precedent it was the Alien Enemies Act, right? They tried to use this as a precedent to just like round up Venezuelans and be like, oh, we have evidence that they're part of this group, and then just literally deporting people and rounding them up, right? Like we're already seeing that those types of powers been abused now. Like some of that stuff got overturned in different court systems, but we've already seen people dive into it, and we could very easily see like the combination of these powers being used extremely aggressively just to start, like, if again a worse party comes in, to just randomly just start destating people, prescribing people terrorists, just like kicking them out of the country. And I think based off of this is what scares me the most, based off of the president of Shamima Begum, I think people would love it. I actually think I think they'd get away with it because they'd be able to, people, sorry to say this, I'm a pro-Palestinian supporter. Some people in the population who don't pay attention to this stuff, who aren't necessarily like, pro-Israel, like they are fed up of seeing pro-Palestinian activists because it's been so long and consistent. They're fed up of seeing people gluing themselves to the street. And even though I almost like tap into this like consistentness, if you're not tapped into the politics of it, people don't realize almost like what they're like selling away in terms of their own rights.
Absolutely. Well, it's a little bit like how everybody is pro free speech until it's something they don't want to hear, and especially on the right that is the case. But it's everyone's pro people getting thrown into prison, people getting taken away, sinking in small boats until they're the one that's getting that done against them. So it'll come back around. They'll be happy about it until there's this horror story of like a white working class like teenager getting killed. That's what it'll take for these people to go, oh, it could happen to me. Oh, I hadn't realized that. And so that's unfortunately where this leads to. It's like the people will be pro it until something like that occurs.
And I can't remember if I covered the investigation on here, but it's about like the UAE have been essentially courting Farage, and they've been courting him about prescribing the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a Muslim Islamic organization that is in opposition to the way states are run in countries like the UAE. They see him as a threat. They were involved in the Arab Spring in Egypt and in other places. So they've been doing everything they can to try and get them prescribed by every country, and they're currently courting Nigel Farage to do that. So we've already got the future scene about what Farage is going to do. He's already said that he is going to prescribe them, despite the fact that many governments refuse to do so because the stuff that's manufactured against them, against the UAE, just doesn't hold up. So we've already got examples of what's going to happen the second they're going to come in and the way the powers are going to be abused.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's it would be funny if it wasn't so sad, because it's like the Faragification of the country is inbound if he does end up winning an election, which, with the way Restore is, who knows? But this idea that like he's this independent, free-thinking man that just wants to free the country, when we're going to have like he'll want to replace like the GBP with like Saudi coin or something, and it'll be this digital coin that he's going to be invested in to make Britain great again. It's going to be, that is the level we're going to be at. And as well, to get this coin through, we're going to have to prescribe people against it as terrorists. The Bank of England, that's just a terrorist cell that is ran by deep left woke trans people or whatever. Like it's going to get insane. But I there is a glimmer of hope, and that is, I don't think British people are built to want to put up with that kind of thing. I think there is an inherent Americanness to that political way of behaving that I don't think works here. And I think the closer we get to it, the more people will go, actually, that's not really us. That's too big and braggadocious. You would hope.
Well, we'll have to see. I'm actually going to talk about this again in a second with the next story, which we'll bring you back for. But first, we have big ambitions for 2026. We want Turn Left to be bigger and better, and we need your support. Technically, the tech issues today don't need any more funding. We just need to get a service provider who's actually going to provide us with software that we're paying for that does its job. We want to be more ambitious than last year, and we're really going to be pushing more and more. We would like 2026 to be the year where we can, potentially get a studio for all of our contributors and sometimes our guests who are in the area of where we want to get our studio, which has already happened now. Your support over the years has been obviously amazing. We love seeing all the same faces here and putting up with our tech issues sometimes. And we're ready to hopefully take everything to the next level. We do rely on small donations, so if you want to be a part of the media organization that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. You can support us there monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. And you can also become a YouTube member for 99p. So thank you very much. But before we actually go to our last story, some of the team went to Makerfield and reported on the ground for the upcoming by-election. We have a clip from an interview with Andy Burnham from yesterday.
I think you've talked a lot about changing this campaign, and obviously it's the sort of the unspoken secret that we're all aware of, that there's you'd like to be Prime Minister, or at least there's a good chance that you might challenge Starmer if you win this seat. A lot of people seem to be voting for you because they like you as a candidate rather than for the party. Have you found that when you've been speaking to people on the door, or are people feeling like you about Labour, that Labour needs to change essentially?
Well, I used to represent about a third of this constituency. It was in my original Lee constituency. Yeah. And I was elected 25 years ago last Sunday, actually. It was 7th June 2001. So I've been around these parts a long time. Yeah. I've always fought for people here on Hillsborough, but other things as well. Yeah. So people do know me. And I've been honest, it's about changing politics. It's about writing a new script, really. And that's what the people here can do. I stood there on the car park and I said at the start, we've had 40 years of trickle-down economics. Yeah. It's not trickled down very much, or not enough to hear. 40 years of neoliberalism, and we've not been saying that for a long time. So just start to say, well, how do you build an economy that works for people in places like this and many hundreds of other places like it around the country? So I think it's been quite liberating from that point of view. Obviously, lots of people have come to support the campaign because I think they recognise there's a breath of fresh air possibly coming into Labour thinking. Yeah. So we'll see where it takes us. But I end the campaign feeling good, feeling that it was the right thing to do, and we'll see what the voters think.
We'll see what the voters think. It's going to be an interesting election. We will be releasing a full video in the coming days, so please keep an eye out for it. And of course, during the election and after the election, we will be doing lots of coverage because it's an election that could potentially change the trajectory of the country. We will have to see. But onto our final story. And here you can see, hopefully, what some of us are getting up to in the background with the amazing support that you help us with, because we're going to talk about a very interesting story related to Henry Novak. So Henry Novak is a name now that almost everybody in the UK now knows as the young man who was killed by Vikram Digra and failed by the police. But an investigation has found it's a name that a Russian neo-Nazi group actually knew before everyone else in the UK did. As I was monitoring social media during the Belfast riots last Tuesday, I noticed that Tommy Robinson posted this on social media. Russian nationalists at academics paying their respects to Henry Novak and sending a message of united patriotism. They also spelled Henry's name wrong. This group caught my attention as their profile stated in their top pinned post. It said, Russian nationalists want an end to the globalist-driven immigration. The plague of third worlders will be purged. So this caught my attention. After I did some research on the Brotherhood of Academics, I can't say that word, academists, are a Russian neo-Nazi organization in the literal sense. I know people throw around the word Nazi quite a bit, more often correctly, but they are literally a neo-Nazi group who want to kill all Jewish people and wipe third worlders from the world. They are under the control of the Tsargrad Society, a sanctioned organization which is under the control of Konstantin Malofeev, a sanctioned Russian billionaire oligarch. Now, Malofeev has been accused of spying in Europe, is also linked to the operations around the annexation of Crimea, and more importantly for this story, the funding and organization of nationalist movements in Europe. Now, as we now know, Tommy Robinson, the day before, posted a video of him in a bar with Errol Musk. This bar was identified by users as the Shilepin bar of the Hotel Metropole in Moscow. Tommy was in Russia. Now, everybody already knows this part, I think, but this is at the same time as other right-wing figures like Andrew Tate, Candace Owens, and some other lovely figures that we all, dislike very much. We're meeting in St. Petersburg for the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. But we do not know if Tommy attended or what he was actually there for, but we can probably all guess. All we know is that the king of Protect Our Women and Children was in a bar in Moscow with Errol Musk, a man recently accused by the New York Times with testimony from the wider Musk family that Errol Musk abused 5 of his children and stepchildren, and it was confirmed that he was in a relationship with one of his stepdaughters that he raised from the age of 4, and now they have 2 children together. And somehow Tommy's supporters just don't care. Now, the day after that photo was identified is when the Belfast riots first started, and Tommy was doing his usual posts on social media, likely from Russia, as he was there just the day before and was promoting this Russian organization under the control of a sanctioned umbrella. Now, I sent what I found to our friends at the Byline Times, who found a lot more than I did. The organization, promoted by Robinson, is part of a wider Russian state-linked campaign to sow division across the UK and Europe. A Byline Times review of X and Telegram posts by the Brotherhood of Academics, a Russian ultranationalist youth movement which operates under the leadership of US-sanctioned Tsargrad Society, reveals that the group pushed a white supremacist framing of Novak's killing on the 20th of May. The day the media coverage of his killer's trial intensified. So that's 10 days before the name Henry Novak was even known by anyone in the UK. Now, the material it amplified came from the Paladins International Sovereigntist League, a Russian-sponsored alliance of extreme right organizations from a dozen countries launched last September in a regional parliament building by the same Kremlin-linked oligarch. Now, the name Henry Novak was not widely known to the UK public until the 1st of June. You can see this through the places like Google Trends. It's exactly where it spikes. But this Russian group that Tommy was promoting while he was in Russia, along with other, Russian Kremlin-linked sanction groups, were literally sowing deep into hybrid warfare campaigns that they knew that this case, before anyone in the UK did, they could see it coming, at least from what we can see, or what Byline found, at least 10 days before anybody was even paying attention to this case. These groups started pushing the propaganda and laid the foundation to what later led to violence at Southampton and obviously had a carry-on effect in Belfast. Now, when Tommy returned to the UK, he was stopped at the border at Heathrow when returning and detained under counterterrorism laws for a few hours. Would they have done this without our investigation? We don't know. But they did seize 2 phones from him and later let him go. And of course, he's screaming 2-tier police. He literally went to an enemy. He went to an enemy state who is currently, carrying out. I think we just found out today that the Ukrainians that were arrested were pro-Russian, who tried to burn down Starmer's home. We've had literally hundreds of hybrid attacks all across Europe over the last few years, of everything from just hacking to cyber attacks, everything from that to attacking infrastructure, and obviously not too long ago, literally killing people. Ayden. Now, I recently saw some analysis, which I think you might find interesting. The group called Valen, who basically analyzed social media for disinformation, and they found that over 50% of activity related to the Belfast riots on social media was bots. Now, including that and everything that we've just gone over, where do we go with this when the government is obviously seemingly spending its time going after Palestine Action and other people? And yeah, they stopped him with counter-terrorism laws, but we have bigger problems. We have mass interference in this country. Where are you feeling on all this information and the interference that and I know is going on in this country?
I think that it's oh boy. It's that kind of, it's like the secret that everybody knows, isn't it? We all are aware that this is what's been going on. We know that these people are dodgy and they have got weird connections to enemies of the state that we have not like countries that we think we don't get along with, but actual people that we are engaged against. I do think it's the kind of thing that's going to come back to bite people like Tommy and Farage on the arse, of this idea that they think they can use these anti-terrorist laws against people they don't like, and that they will then not be used against them the way that they plan to use them against the people once they get into more power. I think Tommy is an undeniable, just scumbag, because he's taking money from anybody to say the things that they want him to say. And at some point, something has to be done about that. But the government has an issue where if they arrest him and put him into prison for the things he's obviously doing, then you turn him into a martyr. And so there's really no winning ultimately with Tommy. But I do think that it being exposed is sometimes going to be enough. You have to think that the people that are deep inside the fan base of Tommy Robinson, something's got a crack with them. A little bit like the MAGA fanboys of once the Epstein files happened, a ton of people that were so pro MAGA that the spell was lifted. So you have to hope that once people realize more and more how for sale Tommy Robinson is, how he is just a mouthpiece for Israel, how he is just saying things that Russia want him to say to destabilize this country, they will hopefully shed this idea of him as this great British nationalist that's going to save us.
Yeah, I'm frustrated because I previously brought up the UAE courting Nigel Farage. So that was part of a wider article, which I think I've talked about before on the channel, about how a leaked intelligence memo found that Visegrad24, which is a far-right account on social media, it's Polish, they were basically getting paid by the UAE to push their propaganda. And the posts that they were posting were the same posts that Tommy Robinson was posting about how the UAE is a great presence in Yemen and Sudan, and basically just all lots of propaganda added in with the Muslim Brotherhood, which again the UAE hate, which Tommy didn't talk about until basically the middle of last year, and now he's posting about them every other day and posting like 5-minute videos about them. Like, again, he wasn't implicated in that investigation, but it's so obvious that he's also been courted by them too, because he turned up there in January. I was invited there, if you remember the clip where he got threatened by that guy. What are you doing here at the boxing match? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm like almost like annoyed that the memo didn't include Tommy, because they got one of these big accounts. But again, that's been exposed, and Visegrad's still going, and nobody cares that they're being paid by a foreign state. We know as well from that. Remember the Syria case where he did that weird documentary. Who does a documentary about a child? But anyway, he did that documentary about the child. He got sued, and it was revealed in the court case that Alex Jones was funded it. The guy who is most modernly famous for two things. One is they're turning the frogs gay, and the second one is denying that 25 elementary school children were killed at Sandy Hook. So that's who Tommy's taking money off of. He's hanging around with a guy who's just been accused of abusing 5 children. And again, you can maybe you can hold your hands up and say he's been accused, he hasn't been proven. But what we do know is that he impregnated the child that he raised from 4. Like, how it frustrates me, because I've met multiple Tommy supporters. I put this to them, and they just don't care. And I can't help but be frustrated. People might say to me, "You're wasting your time." I'm not even trying to almost like convince them. It almost comes out of me in like a rage. I'm not there to try and convince them, but it also frustrates me that I almost like can't at the same time, because it's so obvious, right? Why are you supporting a guy who hangs around and is funded by the people who support things that you say you oppose?
This is it. Well, this is why it's almost there's no point trying to convince these people or anybody that likes them. These days I don't bother, because there actually isn't anything you could say, because everything they've espoused to believe has been proven to not be true. And so all you can do is attack the ideas. And so the arguments are so easily made when now we know all of this stuff about who backs them. The way we defeat this is just by saying, like, well, no, you're okay with pedophiles, actually, and you're okay with like Islamic countries influencing our government and Russian people influencing our power and our structures in the country. You're okay with that. And if you want to be, that's fine. You can own that. Like, you just have to be aware that that's who you support. That's who your friends are. And I think that's the only way to have the discussions with anybody like this, is to just not bother with like, oh, I'm convincing you. Like, can you believe these guys that you like do this? You have to say, no, you're okay with this. You're a friend of pedophiles. That's who you are. I'm sorry. Like, that's the argument that has to be made. And I do believe that, like I said before, hitting them over the head with that over and over again, and getting involved in these sort of channels of communication, and letting them know that, like, oh, these people are the enemy. That's the people that you are supporting are actually the people you're against. This elite secret cabal of horrible people. That's you guys.
Yeah, I just like there's almost this part of me, and it's probably quite egotistical. He's doing the Oxford Union in a few days. Do you know about this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so he's doing the Oxford Union, and I found out yesterday who his opposition is. And it's 2 guys that I'd never heard of. I hope they're great. And the other one is Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Maybe a bomb will fall on it.
Pardon?
Maybe a bomb falls on it, and then everything's solved.
Perhaps. Not that we're endorsing any sort of violence.
No.
But yeah, like, it's frustrating, because there's almost this part of me that knows if he gets platformed, it only helps him. But at the same time, like, I'd love to like go up against him in a way, just because I know so much about him. And it is egotistical of me, I could admit that. But I just feel like sometimes it's kind of like I'll watch somebody who's like pro-Palestinian, who is great. They know lots of information, but they're just shit like on the news or on the stage or when they get platformed. And then you see someone like Mehdi Hassan, right? Okay, I'll gas him up. He's fantastic at what he does. And I just feel like I could have a Mehdi Hassan moment with Tommy and just absolutely destroy him, because I do know more about him than most people do. And it frustrates me. But at the same time, I don't want to ever provide him with a platform in any place. And that's the Oxford Union. If they want to do that, they can. I don't know if you know the history of Oswald Mosley and university speeches, but while literal communists and unionists and leftists were kicking the shit out of fascists in the street in the 1930s, all the Tories in the establishment were going, oh, Oswald Mosley, he should be allowed to speak at universities. It's literally like history repeating itself.
It is that. But you have to think that, like, in the world of ideas, like, the best ones will win out. And so if you're cutting down the arguments they make well enough, in a public forum, then it's worth the risk of exposing them to more people. Because I do personally feel like if somebody listens to these people's arguments, like in an actual structured debate, and starts to like them, they were a lost cause anyway. They were a cell that was going to be triggered and become cancerous eventually. Like there was nothing we could do. But I do think more people will be turned off from them than will be turned onto them. That's kind of what I think by putting them in public. And the only way that you can properly treat these diseases is to bring them out and talk about it, rather than just pretending that these guys aren't an issue. So there is an element of me that does believe that getting them open and getting them talking and exposing them for the fools they are is the win. And having your moment with Tommy to prove how much of an idiot he is would be good for the overall world. But I also understand your worry about exposing him to people that don't already know his beliefs. But it's a really issue. It's a trolley problem.
I think it was last year, I was looking up if there was any studies onto stuff like this, like platforming bad people and what are the consequences. And funnily enough, the first study that I came across, I think it was an Australian study, and Tommy Robinson was used as the subject. And what they did is that they showed him to a group of people who didn't know him, and they showed one interview where he was up against what they considered to be a very good and challenging journalist. And then they put him up against they showed another clip to another group of people of him being put up against a very unchallenging journalist or person who's not going to push back on him. And it did prove that if you platform somebody against somebody else who is terrible and not going to push back, people's minds do change. So by platforming people, you do risk that the only way to actually stop them essentially or harm them is by ensuring that the person who goes up against them is going to be challenging against them. But that in itself is a risk. But luckily, so far, mainstream still resist platforming him. I do have a feeling, though, the way things are going with GB News, that they probably will get him on at some point. I really think they will.
Yeah, I think so too.
We will have to see. But now, let's go to our comments. Let's bring the producer in and let's apologize again for all the tech issues that we've had earlier. But look how smooth it's gone for the rest of the episode. Curtis is adamant that we are finding a new provider because we've had too many issues now.
I think the audio is not working. I've seen in the comments.
What was that?
I don't think they can hear you, Ben. I think we just sat in silence whilst that happened.
Wow. Well,
we were just sat quietly. So just that was an awkward silence. That's so funny.
Ben was saying nice things about the audience as well.
He was.
They had no idea until I said Ben's name that it was actually Ben who was the producer. Well, that's awkward. This is what I mean, guys. Part of the issue is that when we change scenes, add graphics, when people come in and out and things move, when we move them in the background, it kept cutting me off. We don't know why, and it's obviously done the same with Ben.
Yeah, I can appreciate some of the audience if you like, because I've seen a lot of Matt Berry comments coming through. And I see them. I get them every day. I know I sound like Matt Berry or Simon Pegg. I get them both. But if
we know Simon. We know Simon. Ben, you need to add yourself to the scene.
All right, let's see if they can hear Ben.
Well, while Ben's adding himself in, I think he's here now.
He's here now.
Cool.
All right.
Speaketh.
Was I not? Was I just not added to the scene? That must have been an oversight with all the tech issues we were having earlier. Okay, that's good. That's good. Hopefully, everybody can hear me now. What I was literally just saying was how well these two have done in the face of all the tech issues, because they put on a good show for everybody, and it's gone fantastically. Since we had the tech issues in the beginning, and yeah, couldn't be more proud of you guys. So thank you so much, just to you two for pulling together.
I'm just waiting for somebody to confirm that they can
Yeah,
hear you. Somebody said it 20 seconds ago, but that's because you weren't added. So I'm just waiting for somebody else.
That's they're here
Loud
loud
and
and
clear.
clear.
There he is,
Yeah,
there
that's
it
all
is.
good.
It refreshed me.
We're all good. Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, cool. As I was saying, and our audience have been extremely generous, especially considering all the tech issues we were having. So we do appreciate that. So Michael gifted a Turn Left membership. Thank you very much, Michael. And Benji gifted 5 Turn Left memberships. Thank you very much, Benji. It's fantastic to see the people coming back and gifting memberships. That really does help us out, because also it keeps people coming back as well. But we also appreciate the people like not really Rachel Atwood, who donated $2 and said, what about social media limits for the elderly? Do you guys want to answer that question? Because that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think they should also take voting rights away from them too.
Yes. That is always a hot take that I so agree with.
Yeah, like once you stop contributing to society in the same way, you're not working, take the votes away. No, I'm joking. Let academics have 2 votes again, like we did in the 1940s. I'm only joking. I didn't even go to uni. But it comes back to the same answer for young people, right? It's the fact that we need to hold the tech companies accountable, essentially.
Yes. I think if we can choose the elderly people that we're limiting, I will start with my dad, and then I'm happy with it.
I realized you just said choose, but I thought you said shoot. I was like, extreme.
That's all it is. From
God.
But, yes, I was, because I always do a lot of to do with online far right interference. Like these people have just it's beyond just these online far right accounts that have massive reach. Like these bots and everything are now infiltrating next door local Facebook groups and everything, and they're just they're infiltrating everything, and they're everywhere. And that is part of the reason why some of the older generation are completely and utterly buying some of the bullshit that's out there. So don't know how to stop that, but we need to hold the tech companies accountable. That's the answer.
Yeah, something has got to be done about the radicalization of older people in this country. I don't think necessarily stripping them of their voting rights or social media is the way to go about it, but they do we do need to do something about over 65s who sit on social media and on the sofa and just consume GB News and Talk TV all day, and the result of that is a really quite hateful product. And that thank God for the so many older people who I know there's people in our audience, but also people who get arrested protesting for Palestine, for example, and have done incredible work. And it's those people I really think who sort of give me hope. But they are the minority of older people. Unfortunately, we do have a radicalized older population, a right-wing radicalized older population. But it's always worth giving those people a shout out whenever we mention this.
Now that you brought up GB News, because I was considering covering this story today, but I didn't. But did everybody see Bev Turner blaming the Jews? So Bev Turner's the one who went viral for that clip where she said, they weren't riots. And then the guy goes, Beverly, somebody's house was burned down. I can't remember, what's the guy's name? Anyone remember?
Matthew Stadlen.
Matthew Stadlen. So after she got so much pushback on that, because it went so viral, she went on this massive rant and crashed out on social media like a day or two after, where she was like, why does this Matthew guy, why is he on the TV so much? Why is he doing unpaid media work when he's literally like a political commentator, yada, yada, yada. Let's look into his background. You know where this is going. And she starts to talk about like, oh, his grandparents were Eastern European Marxists who brought Marxism to the UK. And by the way, his grandmother was like a famous political activist and philosopher. And then let's look at his dad, who was a high court judge, and then his uncle, who worked as a senior civil servant in immigration. And like they're importing Marxism into the country, and they're rich, and they have jobs in education and in law. They're literally Jews who fled the Nazis.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm sorry, if anyone else would have said that on the quote unquote pro-Palestinian side, that would have been everywhere. That would have been everywhere. And it's like this massive rant on social media. She's literally like calling them like Eastern European. This literal cultural
central
Jewish Bolshevism, basically.
Central European was the term she used, which is like
central.
it's a term that's actually associated with like early 20th century anti-Semitism, like pre-Nazi anti-Semitism, and a lot of the anti-Semitism that was happening in Russia, weirdly, but like Tsarist Russia. But also she says in the rant, I'm just going off the top of my head here, I could bring it up, but like why give it the time? She says about like how they were like anti-fascist, in their ideology as well, and it's like, yeah,
damn anti-fascist.
I think they probably would be. Jesus Christ, like. Oh my God!
I just had to bring it up because it's just so wild. But if she knows who his uncle is and who his grandmother is, she obviously knows that they're Jewish people, and then she just purposely avoided using the word Jew, but just did all the rest of the anti-Semitism. It's just wild. Anyway.
Yeah. Do you mind if we move on to the call? We've got a few to get through. So Clara Ross donated £10 and said, "Fuck Starmer and the establishment. We are being ruled over by genocide heirs, and there's nothing we can do about it." Absolutely. I don't think we need to comment on that one. I think that's self-explanatory. But appreciate the donation, Clara, and agree with the comment, of course.
They're writing angry letters. That's it.
Yeah. And not really, Rachel Atwood donated $2 as well and said FIFA proposed a junior Israel-Palestine football match. Madness. I think.
I shared this in the group chat earlier. I think it was I shared it with you as well in the group chat, Ayden, earlier as well. Yeah. And everyone's just like, what the fuck? Apparently, it's a move of peace. But
it's Infantino thinking he can solve the world's problems with the power of love and money. That's all it is. I just hate Infantino and people in general.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's really it's really horrible, and I can't see a way that you could do it in this current circumstances without like. Without a massive backlash from one either the pro-genocide or the anti-genocide people, whichever side, not that they're two sides usually.
It's whacking a massive hornet's nest with a stick for no reason, and it's awful, and it's also trying to like humanize genocide doers. It's insane. It's so insane.
I think it's a complete ulterior motive. I think he can try and push this idea of peace, but I think he just knows it'll get traction, it'll get money, it'll get views, it'll get sponsors, it'll be highly anticipated, watched, and everything's all about money. Always is.
Absolutely.
Especially with FIFA.
Yes, yeah. There was that thing. Oh, by the way, they I think they tried to ban people from bringing refillable water bottles into the FIFA stadiums, right? So that they could charge people like $12 for a bottle of water. And Zoran Mamdani, interestingly, came out and said, "No, you can't do that." And I think I'm right in saying that Zoran Mamdani was the one who got that reversed because some of the matches were happening in. Yes. So Becca said the Ayden show because that was when Ayden ended up on screen on his own. And Flow Snake said, "Yes, I agree with Huda when Huda was saying to cry wolf about terrorism does put us in more danger from the real thing. This is why I call this government a danger to national security." Do you guys remember that chart that you must have seen it going around on social media, like the number of people charged with terrorism over time, and it gets to like 2024 and it just skyrockets. Because the number of people, it's to do with Palestine action. So the number of people who are being like, it's just massively inflated by what Keir Starmer's done. Is this something we should be concerned about from a national security perspective as well?
Well, No, I wouldn't even say national security. I'd say personal security. I already spoke earlier about Trump trying to, using that prescription and powers about the Venezuelan group, but just, take you back to Rene Good. And I am sorry, because off the top of my head, I don't remember the name of the other gentleman who was killed by ICE off the top of my head. Pardon?
Alex Pretty.
Alex Pretty, thank you very much. And other people who've also been killed but didn't get as much attention. Every time it happened, they were terrorists, remember? Yeah. Everyone who opposed Trump is a terrorist. Isabella Braverman's calling people eco-terrorists. Every Palestinian's a terrorist. If you walk across a arbitrary line in Gaza, it's a terrorist immediately. Palestinians in the West Bank, they're terrorists. Everyone in Lebanon's a terrorist. And again, it's been used so much. And the fact that the government has now used these same powers to prescribe the same language to these people when it's been used at a time, at such a dangerous time as well, it's just disgusting, honestly.
It is truly disgusting. And I think as well, it is a risk to everything, because it's a little bit like, this is a bit of a tangent, but it's a bit like when Metallica were trying to stop people from streaming their music, and so they went crazy about it, and then everybody started streaming their music even more, and then it basically led to the invention of Spotify and streaming, and now musicians don't make any money. It's a little bit like when they started to say that anybody that criticized Israel was an anti-Semite, and then suddenly anti-Semitism has blown up, and now there is genuine, real problems of anti-Semitism, not just people calling people who support Israel genocide likers or whatever, but genuine anti-Semitism has now skyrocketed. And I think it's the kind of thing of calling everybody a terrorist. It just seems to have it's the Streisand effect. Thank you, QVC Al. The Streisand effect of just saying it to try and do something and then causing this adverse effect. And I do think it's going to create a more jaded society, and it's going to create more martyrs, and it's going to create more actual terrorists like the right wing that we're seeing trying to burn people's houses down when they don't like something that's happened.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely. I just wanted to give a nod as well to Autumn Leaves, who was outside the Royal Courts of Justice. I was outside the Royal Court of Justice this afternoon, justice in inverted commas. They were arresting sweet old grannies. So this is continuing this whole, because we didn't even get round to the prescription on Palestine action and the Court of Appeal overturning the finding that it was unlawful. And Vicky Klee said that the Court of Appeal apparently thought suffragettes were innocent lambs, so not sure I trust their judgment. Now, did you see this? This was Lady Justice saying that Palestine action is not I can't remember her exact words, but basically not a peaceful direct action group like the suffragettes. No, they're militant and damage. Damaged property, violently damaged property, I believe the term was used. But basically, it really does show, and so many people were pointing this out, it really does show that they don't know the history of the suffragettes.
They never do. They always use it.
Yeah, obviously it is true to say the suffragettes did have splits and some did non-violence, but obviously, what got the job done was the violence. Emmeline Pankhurst literally celebrated and advocated for bombs to go off in buildings. If I remember correctly, they did obviously always try and avoid human. It was almost more about the buildings and stuff like that. Maybe people can correct me if I'm wrong on that history. But Yvette Cooper, who was obviously overseeing that at the time, because it was Yvette Cooper, she literally has a poster of Emmeline Pankhurst on her wall in her office. It's kind of the irony of it is just it just goes over people's heads.
So just to be clear, overseeing the banning of Palestine action at the time, not overseeing the suffragettes at the time. She's not 100 and something years old. Sorry.
She's been around long enough.
Yeah, she's been around. Also, I do love that there was a direct action group that named themselves Yvette Cooper after that, so that if they got banned, they'd have to put through the Houses of Parliament that Yvette Cooper is a terrorist organisation. So anyway. Michael said, it's scary. You can now be put on trial without a jury knowing what for. I was actually thinking about this, and do you think that, because I worry, I say I worry, I don't worry, but I think that it will have a dampening effect on law, because now anybody who's put in a case where some Palestine action activists, or even any activists really, are being tried, is now going to be thinking, well, if if I enter a verdict and say this person is guilty, even if I think they're guilty of some minor crime, I might be sending them to jail for much, much longer than I expected, because the judge might inflate the charges with terrorist connections that I haven't been privy to, and the press haven't been allowed to report on. Like, surely this has a real, potentially damaging effect on our justice system, right?
Yeah.
I guess we're just gonna have to wait until to see if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, and then if not the Supreme Court, even the European courts. But I think there is carve-outs for domestic, like national security stuff in there. So that's not my area. But well, I guess we'll have to see where it goes. I hope the Supreme Court take it up because it'll be very interesting. But what will be like 2 more years?
Yeah. Well, I think it will have an impact, no matter what. Of just, well, like the more you mess with the system for people to not understand it, then the less likely they are to convict, because they'll feel like, or the more likely they are to convict. No matter what, it's going to sway one of the ways, and it just fucking with the thing that didn't need fucking with, really.
Yeah. We already saw the Tories, remember Suella Braverman's noise law that got overturned? I don't know if that was High Court or Supreme Court, but it was like, if it goes over a certain sound, like they can just like tell the police to stop it, essentially. But what's also funny as well with, like, especially with the riots been going on, and also Southport, is that the police actually have more powers to stop this. They can apply to the Home Secretary to ban a protest in a certain area for a certain period of time if they think that there's going to be violence. So they're not only using the powers that they have and stretching them to their limits and creating new legal precedents, they're not even using the maximum amount of powers which are clearly and currently available to them, to people who are literally burning down migrant homes, carrying out pogroms, and organizing lists of addresses of, what they think is migrants to go and seek them out. They're not getting the full force of the law, but they're stretching the law for pro-Palestinian activists. It's insane.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there were lots more comments like this. Jamie, for example, said, with the sentencing, it feels like a line has well and truly been crossed. All of our rights are being dismantled in front of our eyes. And the majority of the public aren't even aware it's happening. I think 100% correct. And on the other story, on the banning of, at least I think this is about the sorry, this is about social media, I believe. Banning it is a great idea if you never want to be. No, this is about the banning Palestine action. Excuse me. I'm all over the place today. Layla said, banning it is a great idea if you never want to be elected again. Waste a ton of money arresting people who shouldn't be in prison. Leave a lot of people out of work with criminal records. Yeah, I think that's another potential knock-on effect, because those people who come out of prison, even those who've been charged with terrorism but never convicted, they're all going to come out of they're all going to come out of that. They're going to hate Keir Starmer. They're going to absolutely despise the justice system, but also they're not going to be able to, in many cases, get work because of the state of the job market at the moment. And if you've got any kind of dealings with the court system, you're just absolutely fucked. And that will probably lead them to end up doing what we're doing. So Keir Starmer is creating a rod for his own back in many ways. Do you know what I mean?
Pretty much. Just makes me sad. Makes me sad, guys. Very sad.
Yes. And Vicky was wondering, will any of the Belfast thugs face similar charges in the race riots that happened last week?
Some have already been arrested and charged, and some have already been through court. But there's a whole cultural police issues over there when it comes to just how, essentially the north of Ireland works. Essentially, it's a whole different. It's kind of, it's hard for me to almost understand it myself, but people kind of know that they wouldn't pursue those people as aggressively they would the Southport people, because it's just a whole different. What's the word I'm looking for? Not vibe. That's that's the modern word, vibe. What was a better word, Ayden? You know what I'm getting at.
It's a different kettle of fish, so to speak. Because there's a long history that is hard to deal with there. So any decision needs to be taken thoughtfully, because it's a bit of a tinderbox. So it needs to be handled.
Yeah, especially as a lot of the groups that were involved were loyalist groups, and if the state comes in on the side of as has happened in the past, the complications there are massive, like loyalist violence against the UK, which sounds like a strange contradiction, but it's not. It is a thing that has precedent when loyalists in Northern Ireland feel that the UK has overstepped, so they're treading carefully, and that is right in some ways, but I think at some point you've got to like clamp down on it. And I say that as somebody from Ireland, from whose families from Ireland, and well aware of like the troubles and all of that. It's one of those things where it's a catch-22. You're fucked if you do and fucked if you don't.
Politics.
Just to add in really quickly, because I only found this out in the lead up to Belfast, but you remember when the previous riots started in Ballymena? It was over two Romanian young guys who were arrested for allegedly sexually assaulting another, I can't remember if it was a girl. I do apologize, I can't remember the exact details of the case. I only found out the other day those charges were dropped and the victims didn't protest, enact their legal right to protest those charges being dropped. So essentially, those people rioted at the concept of somebody being arrested, who ultimately then just later got let go, and the victims, like, essentially didn't protest them being let go. So it basically, as I interpret it, it wasn't them, or they just did not have enough evidence to even go to the next stage. So essentially those riots were over nothing, because we know that they would only riot if they thought it was a migrant. You know, how many girls have been raped since then? A migrant wasn't involved. So essentially the Ballymena riots were essentially over nothing.
Yeah, no.
Over an idea, essentially, not an actual reality.
Yeah. It's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. Specs Bean Farmer did say, this is unrelated to anything Lewis just said, just to be clear. We usually hang out in the Discord chat after the show. Come join the community, and Specs provided a link there. I just wanted to highlight that because we appreciate and love our communities here, and you guys do so well. And Emma did point out that it was rather funny that behind Andy Burnham in the clip that we played of Andy Burnham, there was a sign saying "absolute slush." It was a slush puppy. Absolute slush behind him as he was saying the things he was saying. And Layla Spellwind. I just want to highlight this comment. My biggest worry is that after banning Twitter. So this came about, just to be clear, this came about because Jacqueline said, what does everyone think of the possibility that Twitter/X could be banned in the UK? I don't like Elon's X, but this is a slippery slope. And Layla Spellwind responded saying, my worry is that after banning Twitter, Reform will use that power not only to unban Twitter, but then to ban LGBTQIA resources. And I wanted to add that there's a strange backlash effect among young people when you try and ban something like this. And it was something that actually happened in the Third Reich. The sort of Hitler Youth organizations became associated with being like really, really dull organizations that a lot of the people who were in them absolutely hated. And it became cool and rebellious to be like not more left-wing, but just to like defy the Reich became like a little cool thing that you could do in very small ways, to be clear. Now, obviously, you couldn't safely do it, on a large scale, but there's a way that could potentially make LGBT issues cool, and has in places where it's been banned. But that was just my thoughts on it. What do you guys think of the idea of potentially banning Twitter and what the knock-on effects might be?
Go ahead, Ayden. I'll let you go first. Unless you haven't formulated your thoughts.
I do agree with the idea that it's a slippery slope to start banning things like that. But it's a little bit like it's treating the symptom and not the cause, right? And banning X doesn't remove its existence, doesn't remove its influence. Something else will come along, something else will replace it. These people always find a home. I just think it's a bad idea to just be banning platforms in absolute ways, because it's, again, once you allow a government the idea that they can ban ways of communicating with each other, then where does that ban end? There's a precedent's been set, and so that's kind of what my gut instinct is. Even though I don't fucking like X, I think it sucks. I think it's it's kind of it's better with it than without it. In a way, am I wrong?
Well, there is another approach because I'm going to try and remember the details, but maybe I'm not getting them accurately. But do you remember when the Telegram CEO got arrested in France? It was like a couple of years ago now, I think. That was not going after the content necessarily on Telegram. It was going after the fact that he was allowing a website to exist that was basically unmoderated.
Yeah,
I think that was basically at the crux of it. And I think that case is still ongoing,
yeah,
which maybe that could be an approach. I think it almost like newspapers, like you give them rules, they have to self-censor in a sense. You know, the Telegraph is disgusting, but they're never going to put post online after somebody gets attacked that immediately it was a migrant without actually knowing it's a migrant, because that's what's happening
yeah,
right now on social media. They did that about the 17-year-old girl who got stabbed the other day in Burnley. Literally half an hour later, it was a migrant, it was a migrant, it was a
yeah,
migrant, it was a boat person. It wasn't. You need to create an incentive for them to self-censor, and if not, then people like the CEOs get punished without having
That's
to
it.
shut down the website. But big caveat, and this is where I don't envy Starmer's position, any move like that right now under Trump will be severely punished,
Well,
and
yeah,
it's just the reality.
completely true. Yeah,
So
Yeah.
we're fucked
Yes,
for the next 2.5 years.
Yeah, that is the concern. Yes, I think the massive state overstep is just a big problem with Keir Starmer in general. The idea, I think it's because there's sort of that good chaps theory, the idea that people who wield state power are always going to be, going to be nice chaps to each other and fair to everybody. And a lot of liberals need to wake up and realise that that's just not the case in the 21st century. It just isn't. I just want to say, while we've been on air, or a couple of hours before we went on air, apparently young Bob, the right-wing influencer, got attacked, and he claimed knocked out in an attack when he was doing some recording. He is okay. He was checked over by a medical crew, and apparently he is, he's okay. But just so you know, that's all that's happened since we've been on air. I think he claimed.
Oh, no, what did
Sorry,
he claim? 'Cause I'm interested. No, because this doesn't necessarily mean it's left wing, because he's involved in some drama right now. But what's he claimed?
Yes, I mean his nickname at the moment is Young Bobby because he accidentally got a load of his friends, Young Bobby as in policeman, because he accidentally got a load of his people on his side charged with terrorism offences because he recorded them. But apparently he believes that a group of, or he claims on Twitter that a group of foreign lads came up behind him while he was doing his debate stand and dragged him to the ground. And he goes on to describe the assault. And he passed out. And it seems like they might have taken some of his belongings, but he is at the time of recording.
I'm watching the clip right now, and I can tell you this is going to cause a storm.
Yes, he is. You got to remember that young Bob. I mean, it's not just a name. He is 17. He's a child.
Yeah.
he looks 40.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
He's 17, but also as well, he's connected to the American movement. He was the youth ambassador for what's the Charlie Kirk organization called? Turning Point USA. He's the UK ambassador. He openly admits that he was groomed by Nick Tenconi, and he's obviously very in with the far right on social media. And people were putting him up as like the new Charlie Kirk and stuff like this. So, watching the video that I've just quickly seen, as Cogs just said that. Sorry, Ben. Online name, real name.
No,
it's going to cause a storm because it is a bunch of non-white lads, from what I can see in the video. So you just immediately know how this is going to get absolutely weaponized.
Yes. Yeah.
Despite the fact that over the last week alone in the UK, there's been multiple cases of minorities being attacked that just haven't made it to mainstream media, just local media, because there's just so much going on right now.
Yes. Yeah. And of course, we don't condone attacks on anybody. It's horrible that he was attacked, but yeah, it's worth saying that he's not alone. There's a lot of violence going around, and a lot of minorities have been attacked, as Lewis said, and haven't got anywhere near the amount of media attention that he's likely to get. And I hope I don't even want to call it backlash. I'm hating the term backlash recently because backlash implies an original crime, right? And actually, there's not been an original crime in this case. Anyway, sorry, we've done quite a long show. Just one more comment, if you don't mind. My apologies. The reason we've done a longer show than normal, it's running towards 9:30 now, a longer show than normal, is just because we had so many tech issues at the beginning. So I wanted to make sure that we did a full show for you guys. And QVC Owl said Tommy Robinson is a god for sale. I wonder why the HMRC don't pull him in. He is totally corrupt. I think the state want him at liberty. Do we believe that the state allow Tommy Robinson to exist where they don't allow other agitators, say on the left, to get away with anywhere near as much, because it sort of serves a purpose in driving the Overton window rightwards?
Just because I know some information on this, it's just the state itself in terms of enforcement on like money and funding and dark money. Tommy's company, which was in his girlfriend's name, took in over I think it was 1.5 million pounds a few years ago. He hired a dodgy insolvency team. The money disappeared, and the auditors said that we don't know where the money came from. We don't know where it went. And by the way, they owed for hundreds of thousands of pounds to HMRC. And would anybody like to guess what the punishment is for his now former partner? She was banned from company's house for 5 years.
Okay.
That's it. What happens when you steal things from a shop? What happens when you do other smaller, pettier crimes? But hundreds of thousands of pounds go missing from dodgy sources into the abyss, and 5 years banned off company house. That's the punishment that they got. It's ridiculous.
Insane.
Yeah, I think the left and the right really do play by very different rules in the UK, and I think that's always worth pointing out. I'm going to hand back to you guys.
I'm just going to quickly say this. I posted this yesterday on X if you want to go and see it. Just this month alone, Urban Scoop, which is Tommy's journalism company, it's not in his name. The donation wallet for Bitcoin that they've now changed to another one has moved $400,000 worth of Bitcoin since the 1st of June. He doesn't need help with legal fees. He's got plenty of money coming in. And it's frustrating that journalists still haven't reported on this, despite my efforts.
Yes, yeah. And again, like your journalistic efforts are considerable, Lewis. I've got to say, like your investigative work over this and also other things that I've seen you in the background doing, really, really incredible stuff. All of you guys should keep an eye on Turn Left, because we will be publishing the stuff that we're allowed to publish through Turn Left and highlighting other things the way that Lewis has highlighted the Byline article that he contributed to. It's absolutely fantastic stuff. And yeah, I'm going to hand back to you guys to close out the show. I'm sorry it's been such a long one, guys.
Yeah, and apologies to Ayden as well, our lovely and amazing guest. Thank you so much, Ayden. I know we've ran massively over, and I know you're not currently at home, and you probably want to go home now, and you might be very hungry and thirsty. So thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people find you?
I am Goatmeall with 2 T's and 2 L's on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. That's the place to find me. Oh, and on Substack, actually, now.
Yeah. And also very famous for the very viral video that goes viral once a month, which is you giving one of the best speeches that you will ever find on the internet about why we need immigration. It's a fantastic clip, and if you haven't seen it, you probably have, and you just don't remember it, and then you'll see it again. Keep an eye out for it. And thank you so much again, Ayden. Safe travels home. And as usual, apologies for the tech issues. We will be looking at other providers in the future who are more stable and hopefully more well-reviewed. And thank you for sticking around until the overrun of the show. We don't know exactly what stories we're covering on Wednesday because there is so much happening right now that we keep changing stories, keep saying what we're going to cover, and then it changes. Obviously, we will be releasing the video, the full video of Curtis and Callum's adventures in Makerfield. Obviously, we have the upcoming by-election just days away, which could change the future of the UK. So we'll see what happens there. And we will see everybody again on Wednesday. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lewis Aaron, and have a good evening.